أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتحدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الحمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين صاحب العصر والزمان خليفة الرحمن إمام الإنس والجان ولعن الله أعداهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين أما بعد فقد قال الله وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الناس أنتم الفقراء إلى الله والله هو الغني الحميد صدق الله العلي العظيم. We send our condolences to the Imam of our time, to our Maraji, to all of you on the Shahadat of Bimar Karbala, Imam Sajjad alayhi salatu wassalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. What happened to your salawat? Nice loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us of those that bring zinat and beauty to our worship, inshaAllah. Before I begin the content, just a couple of points if you don't mind. And nobody from the BQ admin had asked me to say this. It's just something that I was triggered by what Asad Uncle had mentioned. I learned a little bit late in my life that I wasn't very big on investments. I'm not really big with where to invest and who to invest in. And some of you have mastered that craft. I was never into that. But one thing I realized is that if ever you want to put your money in something that will grow instantly, you invest in God. And I know there are a number of people here, and he's right, that I have seen this community, and that many of you now, mashallah, are earning and earning well. And I've seen you guys in the past over a decade now, and you're earning now. And before it was, I can help vacuum, I can perhaps take the garbage bag out, and that's, alhamdulillah, that's all great. But when you invest in God, like you actually sign a check and you give a donation, Allah guarantees you what? A 10% return. No one gives you that kind of return. So beyond the Bitcoin and the Fitcoins and all these little, dhande that we have, mashallah, if the guaranteed ROI is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let me give you one hadith. And I promise you, nobody asked me to say these things. Not Rasulullah, not Walayata. You won't believe me, but I didn't. One hadith that really helped me in this cause. The Prophet of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He says that when you give towards the cause of Allah, when that charity leaves your hand, it turns around and says a few things back to you. It's a very ajib hadith. Okay? And it says, number one, that I was fana. I was perishing. I'm money. Money comes, money goes. But you made me baqa and eternal by giving in the hands of Allah. You made me famous and known in this world. I'll make you known in that world. That charity says. And finally, it says that you added value to my value. $10 that you put, let's say, in some stock, $10 you put in Bayt al-Qayem donation, the same value, the return and the value of each of them is completely different. And because you've added value to me in this world, I'll add value to your amal in that world as well. So I tell my young guys, please, even if you are starting out, if you want to increase your wealth increase, actual physical wealth, Allah makes that promise upon you, give to God, and let God invest that money for you. You'll have barakat in this world and fil akhir, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Second point I want to make, and I know that nobody asked me, but kya karunga? I'm on the member now, you're stuck with me. Is that please, an entire majlis begins with the Quran or Hadith Qissa, and the Salam and the Marthiyah, and ends with Matam and Ziyarat. The Marthiyah that we have, it's actually Arabic word. It's a sunnat of the Imams. A lot of my youth sometimes question, the way we've structured a majlis is very cultural. And they always, for some reason, blame our Hindu brothers. They say, we've gotten everything from our Hindus. Wait a second now. This concept of the fact that someone comes up here, recites some poetry about the fadail of the Ahlul Bayt or the musibah of the Ahlul Bayt is very much in line with the sunnat of the Ahlul Bayt. You know, and I know, you've heard it from ulama far greater than I am, that the Imams of the times after Ashura would make it a custom, you go all the way down the line, they would invite the best poets of their time, ask them to write some shair and shairi about their Jad Hussain. If there wasn't a dard, or as you would say, riqat inside that marsiya, they would stop the poet halfway through and say, Nini, aise mat padhiye. Read as if my Jad Hussain is lying in front of you. So I don't like this idea, and I don't know why it happens here a lot more than anywhere else. The moment I begin, the bus pulls in for some reason. The door opens up and a big flood of people. I can hear you from outside. Part of it is to sit and have the marsiya that begins the process of grief. It prepares the heart. It softens the heart. It transitions from the world outside to the world of Hussein inside. So please make that transition, inshallah. From tomorrow, inshallah, I'll see all of you at Marsiya time. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, please. Sorry, by ma'azrat, I apologize. Our discussion yesterday was around the subservient identity. And for those who weren't with me last night, where were you, first of all? How dare you go somewhere else when I'm in town? We were talking about the idea that we are a complex human being with multiple levels of identity. There are those who identify with your last name, with where you're from in this world, from your job, to your habits, to your gender, to you name it, right? Hum log Jafri log hain, hum log Sadiq log hain, hum log Zaidi log hain, right? That's how you identify. And that's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes we're American, sometimes we're Muslim, sometimes there's a dash, we're an American Muslim or Muslim American, right? Whatever you want to call it. We have multiple identities. Nothing wrong with that. But, however, there are moments when we have a dominant identity over a non-dominant identity. The example I gave you last night was you're sitting with your friends, you're chilling out, relaxing, enjoying some free time, and your wife calls you or your husband calls you that, look, something's wrong with our son, I'm taking them to the hospital, can you please come home right away? At that moment, you have an identity as a friend and one as a spouse or a husband. What would be dominant, hopefully, inshallah, is that, guys, I have to go, my family needs me. So at that moment, the friend identity takes a back seat. The spouse and the parent one is dominant at that moment. Okay? So we talked about the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts all of that, but says, look, let me remind you, there's one dominant identity in this world, and that's where I humbled myself and maybe all of you, and that is that when you remove all the levels, all the frills, all the colors, everything else, all of those filters, you are at the end of the day a slave of God. You're an abd of Allah. That is your dominant identity. That should be that identity that overtakes and devours and consumes any other identity. So if you are a doctor, for example, if you are a lawyer, a dentist, if you are somebody who invests some money and you have an opportunity to make some good cash but the haram way. So your investor in you says, yeah, do it, man. It's quick money. Let's go. In this economy, this inflation, it's okay. Do it now. Do tawbah in Ramadan. You're okay. At that moment, what should be dominant is, look, whether I'm in the masjid or the mihrab or Shab Qadr or Bain Haramain, Allah is always afzal over everything else. He is akbar. He is the greatest of everything else. At that moment, I walk away from that and I I attach myself to the dominant identity, me as a slave, with the yaqeen that the risk I walked away from, he'll double that, triple that, and give it to me through the halal way. That much yaqeen we should have at least. If I walk away from some money because of Allah, He'll find another route to get me not just that amount, but sometimes even more than that amount. وَيَرْزُقُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ, the Quran says. I will give you risk, Allah promises, from a source that you never even accounted for. What was a door, a dead end, becomes a doorway towards Allah's risk and rizayat. That's what we're talking about. What is that identity? The subservient identity. We talked about abid, that's all last night's conversation. You can go online and catch up if you want. What I want to talk about is the idea that we left off last night by saying that Imam Sajjad was that Imam, alayhi salatu wasalam, please. Allahumma salli. That for 3 decades he carried the trauma and the gham of the day of Ashura, the lone male surviving individual from the day of Ashura. One male survived that day. He took that trauma for 3 decades. How did he do it? One of them is the fact that what? It was through his ibadah. A lot of you, a lot of my sisters right now, a lot of my young people in front of me are carrying a lot of hardships in their heart. That's all I talk about. There's so much suffering in our community. The moment that people know I'm coming in New Jersey, I get requests. Please, I need half an hour. I need 10 minutes. I need 20 minutes. Can I come see you for an hour? Can I come see you? And it breaks my heart. I wish I had more time. I wish there was more than one of me, just so I can at least listen to your gham and your hardships. A lot of, especially in our youth. And we have to figure out an outlet. Now, this society will sit there and say, numb that hardship by what? Reel after reel after reel. Just keep scrolling and scrolling, man, until you forget your hardships. Or God forbid, towards a substance, or drown yourself in gaming, or drown yourself in women, or drown yourself in drugs, or drown yourself in these types of things. But don't actually face the issue. Imam Sajjad said, all of my trauma, all of my hardships, I'm drowning myself into God. And that's my outlet. So I want to present to you this path at least, of all the various outlets you have in front of you to numb yourself from your hardships. One of them I want you to consider is God Himself. And the first step that He tells Nabi Musa, after introducing Himself to Nabi Musa, La ilaha illa ana, there is no God but me, fa'buduni wa aqimus salat. The moment He says to worship me, the first pillar of that is salat. We will not get anywhere without namaz and salat. Now, what I want to speak about today is a concept. I said it's not a fiqh discussion. How many parts of the body in sujood? Can I recite qunut in Urdu? Those are all fiqh discussions, not my topic. My topic is a little bit deeper. Okay? And I want to speak a little bit about the concept of mura'at tonight. Please stay with me. One thing we have to realize is that God is a process-driven God, number one. And we live in a results-driven society. And this clash sometimes happens is, inside of us, my young guys believe, if I can't do it perfectly, I shouldn't do it at all. First misconception. And maybe that might work in the corporate world, it might work in the sports world, it might work somewhere else, but in the world of God, He will reward you for your efforts. He will reward you based on your capacity. I'll give you a very simple, quick, real-life example that I use in the first Ashra. When I was learning Farsi in Qom, when you arrive in the Hawza Ilmiya in Qom, the first 6-7 months they teach you Farsi. How to recite, how to read, how to write, how to give a speech. By the end of it, you're writing an essay in Farsi, you're giving lectures in Farsi. That's how well they teach you. Around the 3rd or 4th book, there's 6 books in total. It might change now, but back in my time, 6 books in total. By the 4th book, my teacher would ask us for a 1-minute to 90-second speech in Farsi on any topic you want. Mawzu azad. So in my class, there are all non-Iranians, obviously, from different countries. Beside me was a young man from China, born and raised in China. Okay? Not a Hyderabadi in China. That's not someone who's in China. Yani he was Chinese. Now, you know the language of China, the language of Farsi, Chinese are two different things, okay? Didn't know the letters, forget the actual sound. So I saw him from when he was learning all the way with me, and this man struggled, but he worked really, really hard. Now, after everybody was done, he got up there, he gave his 90-second speech, you know, he was struggling, he was stuttering, he was eyeing, he was oohing, but he nailed the verb structure. The sentence structure was perfect. He had all the tenses properly, okay? Now in that class, there are Lebanese individuals, there are people from Pakistan. If you know a little bit of Urdu, Farsi is very easy. A little bit of Arabic, Farsi is very easy. So 90 seconds for a Pakistani was nothing. Went up there like a bulbul and started speaking for like, half an hour, okay? This guy struggled, he was sweating for 90 seconds. Now one methodology or one ravish of the houses sometimes that I didn't like is that they would announce your marks right after the test in front of everybody, okay? And the one who got the highest mark of the 12 was a Chinese individual. And he explained, my teacher, these were ulama who taught us, with amamas on their head. 15, 20 years in the hawza, to what? To teach someone like me Farsi. Very humbling to see. He would say that I want to adopt the sunnat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, reward him for his effort. Even if the actual package had some gaps and holes in it. But the effort was the best effort in the class. That's called mura'at in the deen. To understand your capacity, to present that capacity, and then to have the yaqeen that Allah will take my capacity. Look, let me give you a simple example. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. We have something in our communities called spiritual trauma. And my elders have to accept this a little bit, please. I know sometimes, I hear from you, you tell me that sometimes you really baby our youth, Maulana. You really do. You spoon-feed them, this and that. Make them a little bit, mardanigi, as you say. A little bit of jur'at. Let them handle this dunya a little bit. But the reality is that there is a lot of spiritual trauma in this room, in this building, actually. To the point where any resemblance of any deen, hatta coming to this building sometimes, for a lot of our youth, there's a pit in their stomach. Now you may not accept, that's okay, you don't have to accept it. But the reality is that how the deen was presented to these young, beautiful souls sometimes wasn't the best option. We were at the Howard's by his house today for majlis, and the speech was boring, but the halim was delicious. Those who were there, you know. Now imagine if, Shubair comes to me and says, say this is halim for you, and he puts it in a plate, and the halim looks amazing. There's piyaz on it, and there's adrak on it. You know how you dress up a halim, khair. On that plate are, different size of strands of hair on that plate. There's dirt on that plate. There's obviously people who had eaten dal, and the dal wasn't washed away, so there's crust of dal on that plate. The halim is in there, but the plate itself is quite disgusting. Then he puts a glass of water in front of me, very cold glass of water. My throat is dry. I want to drink it. There's particles of dirt in there. There's fingerprints inside the glass, outside the glass. The water is pure, but the presentation is a problem. How we presented our deen to our youth sometimes was problematic. And we did our level best. You hear about, for example, your Quran teacher, that if you presented, you recited your jim as your kha, the nukta went on top by accident, right? You can either say, look, try that again, look at the letter properly, or you take your ruler and you smack the hand. Or you come to an alim afterwards asking a question in the Q&A, and that alim embarrasses that individual. Then what kind of question is this? Aren't you ashamed of yourself? You're 35 years old. You're asking me about wudu and these type of things. Or you come to the center, not here, anywhere. There's judgment from the aunties and the uncles, mashallah. Unsolicited advice about weight. Why aren't you married yet? Why don't you have a kid yet? Is there a problem? I know a doctor. Ooh, all sorts of things. All sorts of things. Judgment upon judgment. Happens in every single community. And they really come from a place of love. In the process, however, the problem is that the presentation was flawed. Was flawed. To the best of their ability, but it didn't fit well with them. They simply looked at the deen as a checklist. That checklist became a burden after a while. Salat went from namaz portal, okay, fine, you're rolling your eyes, Allah, Bismillah, you're rolling your eyes, going through the motions, right? To the fact that I don't want to pray anymore. I don't believe in this prayer. I have no idea what you're doing. Go up and down, up and down, up and down. So many of our youth ask me, why do I need to pray salat? I can meditate. I can go for a walk. I can have alone time in my room. I can do hot yoga. Why do I need to sit there and do that? A lot of it is the fact that there is spiritual trauma. And I recognize that to my young guys. And you have to realize that our elders did exactly what they could do to present the deen in their limited resources. You have to, and I'm sorry, please don't hate me, you have to get over that. Move on from that. If that means you start fresh, then start fresh. We have 90-some-year-olds at the door of Imam Sadiq asking him to teach them anything about the deen. 95-year-old, 97 years old. Unwan Basri is a very prime example of that. This is a man who came to Imam Sadiq when he was 3 years away from being 100 years old. Saying, please, Imam Sadiq, teach me anything you can. So I get the fact that our distance from God, our annoyance, God forbid, for salat, there is a background story for that. I get that. But how long are you going to hold on to that? Because when you reach the moment where you are answerable towards your actions, and so will I, at that moment you can't say, well, that grade 4 Dinyat Sunday school or Saturday school teacher, because of that individual, I'm not praying salat for the rest of my life. There's one man, true story, I tell you. He had a full beard. One day he came, clean shaven. As long as I've known him in Toronto, full beard, and a beautiful beard. Nice cut, lined up, color bead, this and that. Beautiful beard, well-kept beard. Ek din jo hai ghaib. As if in the parking lot, he's doing a fresh shave in the parking lot. So himmat se, I asked him, what happened? It's one thing where you make a mistake trimming your beard, I get it. He explained to me. I met an alim. And that alim's akhlaq was so horrible, and all I saw on his face was this big dardi, this big beard. And if this is what the dardi is, I don't want the beard on my face. Extreme, right? You think, wait, that's a little bit extreme, but look at the thought pattern. Ever since then, I told myself, until I'm in this world, I'll never have a single hair on my face. I'll tell Allah it's because of that alim that I have a clean face right now in front of you. Do you think that's going to work? Will that fly in the grave? It won't. So if you are somebody, please, who has spiritual trauma, and there are a lot of you that may not even be able to recognize the fact, the moment any talk of deen comes up, there are people who stick their fingers in their ears, who go on their phones. Even right now, they're on their phones because it's an awkward conversation. You have to stop giving those people that much real estate in your spiritual sense of the word. And begin to start that rebuilding process with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If he wasn't introduced to you properly, reintroduce him to yourself. And start that process carefully. Knowing full well, there's a capacity issue. This is not a competitive issue. It's a capacity issue. We have to understand that Allah looks at you in your entirety, your package, your upbringing, your bachpana, your childhood, your parents, your community. He sees all of you and he takes all of you like that. He does not say, why can't you be like 1, 2, 3, 4? No. He says, you are your own path. You have your own path. You have your own capacity. And he'll accept whatever it is from you. Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam says, he says there are moments that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts 10% of our salat. Then there are moments where he'll accept 25% of our salat. Then there are moments where he accepts 50%, and then of course 100% of it all. Now if you're a glass half empty kind of approach, if you're a negative Nancy or a negative Karen as you would say nowadays, then oh my God, only 10%, there's no ummid, there's no hope. Wait a second now. From this hadith, we can extract the fact that God will take anything from us that we give him. Anything. If that one alhamd in my maghrib today was with huzur qalb and I was there present, I knew what I was saying when I say maliki yawmiddin, and he'll take that from me, then that's fine. The point is, God does not operate in an all or nothing environment. And that's the problem. This Western society will shove down your throat, either do it perfectly or don't do it at all. Don't embarrass yourself in the process. And sometimes we have a little bit of a cop-out. I'm being very real with you guys tonight. A cop-out that, well, you know what? I can't pray namaz 5 times a day. I just can't pray salat 5 times a day. And I don't believe you. I'm sorry. I don't believe you when you say I can't. You know why? Because I believe God. I don't believe in God. I believe God. When he says, La yukallifullahu nafsan illa wus'aha, that I would never ask anyone to do something that they can't do. So God thinks you could do it. God made it wajib on you. You're telling me that I can't pray salat 5 times a day. So I'm going to believe in God. I'm going to believe what God says, that it's inside of you. It's a matter of discipline. It's a matter of approaching salat properly. What is our connection with salat? That has to be understood tonight. Okay, that's point number 1. Point number 2, very important. I'm being very real now. Okay? Point number 2 is sometimes I think that us young people, and I'll say us young people, inshallah, that we think for a second that I need to have a spiritual experience every time I pray salat. Right? This mi'raj of the mu'min, this hijrat towards Allah, this tanhai and al-fahshahi wal munkar, the Quran says, that all this fahsha, this munkar should be gone from you, right? We've seen people in our community, right? For years and years, they have this massive nishani of sujood on their forehead. They have a nice white beard, for example. Jab bhi dekho, he's the first one in the Jamaat for namaz. Never misses one salat. Tells you with fakhr, I've never missed one salat, Maulana, mashallah. When he opens his mouth, his family runs for cover. His akhlaq in the home is he's Saddam inside the house. So where is that salat going? I don't know. So we have to understand one point, is that it's not the case always. You're going to have this irfanic, mystic, walk through walls experience after every single salat. It wasn't meant for that. All salat is, at the very bare minimum, all salat is, the 5 minutes of salat is that you check in with God. You say, Labbaik Allah, you're my boss, you're the master, I'm the slave, go back to your day. That's all it is. It's a punch in, punch out. Understand the simplicity of it. That's all you're doing. You're saying, I'm going to put pause. My lunch break is 20 minutes. I need 5 minutes for salat. Hold 1 second. Let me go punch in. Say, Maliki yawmiddin. Thank you very much. Go back to work. In the evening, I come home. I'm dead tired. Hold on 1 second. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. Punch in. That's it. 5 times a day. Salute the boss and go back to your day. That's all it is. That's all it is. I'm sorry. If Allah grants you that moment where you can see your barzakh and I saw a dream, Maulana, the Imam came to me, mashallah, fantastic. But after every salat, you expect that. Naturally now you're like, oh, you know what? I've been praying all my life. I never get dreams. I never get this mi'raj. I never get this nothing. So I'm just going to, namaz isn't for me, Maulana. Oh, it's not for me, Maulana. Not a watch or a shoe or a gift or a pair of pants. That I don't wear this, I don't like this watch. All it is, at the very bare minimum, is a reminder that I am a slave of God and He is our master. That's all it is. And because we are forgetful human beings, He says, not once a week, not once a month, I need you to go in and recheck in with me 5 times a day. And the breakdown is before you start your day, in the middle of the day, in the mid-afternoon, in the evening, before you go to sleep. Now, since I'm here, let me make this one point here with himmat and jurat. Since, mashallah, all of you with me. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. I'll say it, khair, inshallah. Allah's with me. If our Sunni brothers have this extreme that they never combine their salat, they have to pray in 5 unique time slots. Even though we have in our books and in their books that the Prophet would combine prayer even when it wasn't convenient for no apparent reason. If that's one extreme, our other extreme is that we only combine our salat. Please hear me out. Ye to Sunni ho gaya? No, I swear to God. Ya Hussein, I promise. I promise. Sometimes it's good, if you can, to spread your salat out. I'll give you 2 examples. I don't know how it is, but in Toronto, in the summertime, we have long days. Our Fajr is at 3:30 sometimes in the morning. Our Maghrib is at 9:30 at night. Now imagine, 12 noon is Zohar Asr. Maghrib is at 9:30. Okay? That's 9 hours. So 12:30 we start namaz, 12:32 we're done namaz, mashallah. Don't laugh at me like, oh, well, not me. I take a good, no. 12:32, I'm being generous. Now from 12:32 till 9:32, there's no dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at all. Would be better is 12:30 Zuhr, maybe 3:30 Asr, and then 9 o'clock Maghrib. Break up that day. Go back and check in with the boss. Say, boss, I'm here. Come to winter. Our winters are longer nights. 5 p.m. is Maghrib. You come home from school sometimes half an hour later, it's dark outside. So Zuhr at 1 p.m., you played that Zuhr Asr. Now you pray Maghrib at 5:30, all the way until 11 o'clock. No dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. 5:30 Maghrib, maybe 8 o'clock, 8:30 Isha. You don't lose your Shia passport by doing that. No one's taking away your identity or your Shanakhti card. But it's important that we constantly be in the dhikr of Allah. Remember. The dhikr of Allah. The word dhikr means what? Tell me, I want to hear from you. Means what? Dhikr means what? To remember. Follow the example. Let's say somebody here I haven't met before comes up to me and says, Mana, do you remember me? Please, my youth in the back on the chairs, follow my example, please. Do you remember me? I said, Baba, I've never met you before. Give me 5 minutes to forget about you, and then I'll remember you, inshallah. If you're in front of me, I can't forget you. If you leave within 10 seconds, trust me, I'll forget about you. So there's no point in him asking me, do you remember me? But if someone who I met 5 years ago in one of my BQ camps, who's now coming now, full beard, mashallah, big tall guy, do you remember me, Asad Bhai? I'm like, whoa, wait a second, yes, I remember you. Why? Because we had a previous encounter already. The only time somebody would ask me, do you remember me? Please remember me. They would message me. Do I look familiar to you? Right? Do you have dhikr of me? When Allah keeps asking you, do dhikr of me, that means that He's not new to us. We've had a previous encounter with Allah already. We've had a mulaqat with Allah already. All He's asking us to do is remember that moment and bring it over here as well. You understand what we're saying? Right. So we have to understand that first of all, let's curb our expectations when it comes to salat. If you don't get this feeling after salat, it's okay. You've punched in, you punched out, move on with your day. Because there'll be moments where you will feel incredible afterwards. And there'll be moments where you saw it as a zimmadari, as a responsibility, and you fulfilled that. Okay? Point number 3. We have to be a little bit merciful with ourselves. One thing I wish I learned when I was a young age. I don't know where sometimes the harshness of the religion comes from. I don't know. From this member, I'm sorry, from our parents, from their generation, sometimes within us as well. The deen is a lot of things. One thing it's not is harsh. It was never presented to us as harsh. It was always sent to us as a mode of mercy, as a mode of compassion, as a mode of love, as a mode of starting over, as a mode of look, whenever you're ready. Ujibu da'wati da'i idha da'an. I will answer your call, Allah says, whenever you call me. If you call me after 10 years, I'll pick your phone up. If you call me after 6 months, I'll still pick your phone up. It's not like me where someone calls me after 10 years, buddy, himmat, forget it, I'm going to hang up. Why should I answer your call? I've been calling for 10 years, you didn't pick up once. Now all of a sudden, aqal you're calling me after 10 years. No, thank you. I'm not a kilona that you pick me off the shelf, you play, you put me back. But God's not like that. Idha da'an is important. Whenever you call me, I'm always ready for you. But you have to call me initially. Okay? So we understand that much? Now, let's understand what the sunnah of Allah is. I'm not saying Allah is only Jamal, only love, only forgiveness. No, we have this idea that He is Qadir, and He is Muntaqim, and He is the Avenger, and there is wrath. He sends la'nat in the Quran on groups of people. Absolutely. But for you individuals who are trying so hard to do what's right, I don't think anybody here, I've said 1,000 times, anybody here is waking up every single morning and saying, you know what, today I'm going to show Allah. Watch what I do to God. Watch what I do. You haven't seen anything of my dushmani. I'll show you today how much of an enemy I am of God. No one does that. We're trying our level best. to try to find God in everything, from the OR to the accounting desk, to the dentist chair, to the member, to everything. We're trying our best. Now, you have to have a little bit of a better image of God to know that He sees my struggle. I'm the Chinese guy learning Farsi in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm hooing, I'm hawing, I'm hesitating, I'm sweating, I barely get through my salat, I may miss here, I may not be there for Shab Qadr, I may not fast all the time, but God sees the fact that I'm struggling up there, I'm trying up there. That Chinese guy paused 10 times in 90 seconds. All because he was trying to figure out, do I say, for example, mi kunam, or mi kunim, or be kunim? At the end, he got it right. But he paused, he struggled, there was no rush. And no one said, look, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. No, the teacher, Ustad, took his time saying, you just figure it out. I know you're trying, you're struggling very, very hard. That's why he orders the Holy Prophet. These are verses you've heard 1,000 times. This is Qayem now. You've been around for decades. You've heard these verses on this very member. Apply them in your life. My young guys, please, I need your ears right now and your hearts. He says to the Prophet, when you approach this nation, trying to introduce God and me to them, please, لو كنت فظا غليظ القلب لانفضوا من حولك. That if you were hard with them, hard-hearted with them, if you were sucked with them, if you were all or nothing with them, if you were chappal and dhande with them, they would have left you a long time ago. Instead, he says, فَاعْفُ عَنْهُمْ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لَهُمْ وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ. Forgive them, be merciful towards them, and seek forgiveness for them. And seek their advice. That's mercy and compassion. That's love and compassion. That's step by step. That's marhala by marhala. That's slow down with these individuals. It took the Prophet of Allah 20 plus years to bring down the complete Sharia. Look, we have the sunnah of the Holy Prophet. We have sunnah of the Imams. God Himself also has a sunnah. Sometimes we follow sunnah ilahi as well. God knows if from day number 1 I made this wajib and that wajib and riba haram and alcohol haram and women haram and blah blah blah, then that day number 1 says, oh, this is too much. Khul Hafiz, I was good worshiping idols. I don't need all this. God's saying, no, you have to go very slow with these individuals. Ready their hearts, massage their hearts, lead them towards the doors of heaven. The last thing to be made haram in Medina was riba and interest, as you know. Why? It was prominent in that society. They survived off of interest, and God knew that. So 13, 15, 18 years after the first wahy of Allah, then God in Surah Baqarah makes riba and interest haram. 20 years He completes the Quran, not on one day. Ayat versus ayat against verse, blah, 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 bit by bit. Here's 2, here's 3, here's 5. The point is, God wasn't in a hurry. God was being very slow, being very fair with the people in the Jahiliyyah era. And I'm asking all of you to adopt the same thing for yourself. If you don't have a connection with God or the deen, or you have spiritual trauma, be easy with yourself. Go slow into the deen. Start from scratch, I don't care. Because the reality is, this is where I get a little bit serious with all you guys. The excuses for all of my young guys are running out. They're running out. There's too many great ulama in your language who are doing incredible work out there. Have you seen the topics this year in Muharram? They're life-changing. Have you seen the amount of efforts these ulama, not me, these ulama who are tackling issues that you face on a daily basis with courage and shuja'at, boldly looking straight in the camera on a live stream. This is haram, this is wrong. And still, I don't know what my deen wants from me. Baba, pick up, if you want to seek knowledge, then seek knowledge. It's all there waiting for you. In any platform you want a podcast, you want a lecture series, you want an hour lecture, you want a 2-minute short, what do you want? What do you want? You want Instagram Reels, everything you could possibly have. Download a course on your own time, take that course. That's fine. Everything is at your disposal. And still, I don't know what to do, Maulana. It's frustrating. I wonder, how can I prove God to myself? Go seek it. We're done with excuses now. And start with salat. Okay? Now, that's my muqaddamah, can you imagine? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. I want to present one philosophy of salat in front of all of you. When it comes to Qayem, a lot of you are struggling with self-worth, self-compassion, self-love. A lot of you find it hard to forgive yourself. And I've never seen anyone beyond the Ahlul Bayt present this idea of being subservient to a master to be ba'is izzat wa fakhr inside the deen. Let me explain. Yesterday I mentioned to all of you, sometimes some kids come to me and say, Maulana, my uncle told me that I'm not doing taqleed anymore. So I'm not doing taqleed anymore. I said, why? Because my uncle says so. Well, then you're doing taqleed to your uncle. You've left the marajeh, and now you're doing taqleed to your uncle. Taqleed is there, but you've chosen a jahil uncle, with all due respect, to an alim in Najaf and Qum. That's your choice. It's like somebody saying that I don't answer to anybody. I am my own person. I answer to what I want inside of you. Then what you want inside of you becomes your God. This absurd notion, I don't think anybody here realistically has this notion that I am free. This fallacy of absolute freedom is just that, it's a fallacy. We are answerable to something, either inside of us or outside of us, either above us or in the depth of our hearts. But there are idols that we place everywhere, or there are idols that we break everywhere. But this idea that I am masterless, and I presented this to Surah Zumar last night, is a fallacy. Now the point is, if I am going to be enslaved anyways, who do I enslave myself to? And let's come to Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam. These are treasures, I tell you. The words of the Ahlul Bayt are treasures. And sometimes we take it for granted. We have these at our disposal. These are your heroes. These are your role models. Don't chase after these people. Try to emulate the Ahlul Bayt. Move from admiring the Ahlul Bayt to emulating the Ahlul Bayt. Leave the admiration to the Sikh poets and the Hindu poets and the Christian writers. They can admire your Ahlul Bayt, no problem. But the expectation from you and I is not just admiration, it's emulation. There's a big difference. Khair. Different mawzu, different ashra. Imam Ali has this beautiful, beautiful statement. Ya ilahi, sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, please. Follow every word of this. I'll translate every word and take you through this very, very slowly, and then I'll come to Qayem. I promise you. I will join these two together. He says, Ya ilahi, kafa li izzan an akunu laka abdan. وَكَفَى بِفَخْرًا أَن تَكُونُوا لِي رَبًّا. Oh, it is a statement that we have to really engrave in our hearts. Oh Allah, it's enough of a source of respect for me. The words are Izzah and Fakhr. Izzah, you know, both these words are Farsi and Urdu. Izzah, it's enough of a source of respect for me that I am your slave. And it's enough of a source of pride for me that you are my master. Have you ever heard of anybody combine the idea of being an abd of something with their izzah and their fakhr? Have you ever heard of anybody elevate the idea of servanthood to the point that Amir al-Mu'mineen has? That it is my honor that of all the various idols I have to choose from, I've chosen to what? Enslave myself to you. So those people who are looking for honor, validation, self-respect, a lot of that is to enslave yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now come to Qayem. Qayem, standing in salat. Imam Khomeini rahmatullah alayh in his Adab al-Salat, a masterpiece on salat, he talks about Qayem in one of his chapters. After 17 chapters of talking about Adab qalbiya, the etiquette of the heart, then he gets into an actual discussion on taharat and wudu in 19th chapter. He spends 17 durus just getting our hearts ready to stand in that mihrab. There's a whole chapter on Qayem. Now you would sit there and think, okay, this person's standing. How can you write three pages on just standing? A person standing there. What's the big deal? Look at what he says. The act of standing sends multiple messages to those who are watching you stand. I'll give you an example. It's my example, not his. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. These examples have to be repeated sometimes to the point it becomes part of our malaka and disposition, where we know it like this, and we think about it the moment I stand there and say, Allahu Akbar. Imagine now you were at a wedding, okay? At a wedding. And you're sitting there at the table with your friends, and somebody comes to you, approaches you at the table, and begins to insult you. In front of the entire table, insult you. Ill of your father, ill of your mother, ill of your family, starts talking about you, blah, 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 and you're sitting down. And people are watching this tamasha and this spectacle happen. And all you do at that moment is, you stand up. When you stand up without saying a word, you announce to this person, that's enough now. Bahut ho gaya, I'm not going to take this anymore. You don't take that sitting down, they say. Are you going to take that sitting down, bro? No, I'm not. Once you stand up, you announce that, look, I am somebody. I have some self-respect. You can't say these things to me by me standing up. It doesn't have the same effect when I'm sitting down. Looking at him, say, stop this, please don't. No, stand up. Be a man, stand up. And what? Announce that I am somebody as well. That's one example. Next example, same wedding, same table. You're sitting there, an alim walks towards the table. What do? Hopefully you stand up. Same act you did half an hour ago. You stood up. It's the same act. But this time the standing up is to announce to this alim that I am humbled in front of you. I have respect for your knowledge and for your personality. Me standing up is showing you my humility towards you. One act of standing, two different, very extreme meanings. One is an announcement of self-care and self-worth. One is a matter of what? Humility and subservience. When we stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that mihrab, facing Qibla, about to say Allahu Akbar, and we're just standing, at that moment we announce two things in that standing. Number one is, God, I'm humbled in front of you. I'm standing in front of you, facing Qibla. Number two, I am somebody, I belong to be here. I choose to be your abd. Sheikh Tusi rahmatullah alayh would circle the day he was baligh on the calendar and would celebrate that day every single year. I do birthday weeks when it comes to my birthday. Not days, week celebration in my house. He says the day that I became baligh is the day I became worthy of Allah's sharia and follow His ibadah. Now I'm saying I'm worthy to pray salat now in that mihrab. I'm worthy to fast. I'm worthy for hajj if it's wajib on me. Meaning I am somebody. Of all the people I can sit there and attach myself to, I've chosen with my own freedom to stand in front of you and announce, God, I belong here, but as a humbled servant. That one act of standing, two different meanings. So a lot of you are seeking validation, self-worth. Tell me who I am. I feel like I'm nobody. God's saying, stand in front of me. Not only are you humbled in front of you, and you break the ana inside of you, but you also what? Announce that I am somebody as well. Look, let me give you a very simple example, and then Masa'ib. Fateh Mecca, the example is beautiful. The imagery is outstanding. I mentioned last night, Western spirituality will sit there and will build the ana inside of you. You will give somebody who's downtown a blanket. You'll give somebody downtown who has a meal. You'll have a whole cameraman behind you, filming the entire thing. Hashtag giving back. It's on the reel. Watch me as I feed the poor downtown in New Jersey. Watch me as I hand out blankets in downtown Philly. Watch me. Get the angle from here. Get this from here. All of it is meant to serve the ana inside of me, the me inside of me, the ma inside of me, that ego inside of me. The deen says that that spirituality that I have, meaning God has, is meant to destroy the ego inside of you. It's not meant to build it up. How can you be a slave if you're worshiping yourself? So the first portion of us trying to get salat to be an avenue of salvation is we have to break our idols inside of us. That's why the very foundational testimony is La ilaha illallah. Sometimes we spend the entire life, our entire life, in La Ilah, the small G gods. Let me give you a Fatih Mecca example. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The Prophet of Allah enters Mecca, conquers Mecca, announces what? Amnesty, amniyat for Abu Sufyan. And then he sends out his task force in Mecca. You go on the outskirts, you go here, you go here, you go here. Wherever you see an idol, destroy it in Mecca. Small temples, big temples, outside people's homes, blah, blah, blah. All of it. Get rid of everything from the outskirts of Mecca to the city of Mecca. And then he grabs Amir al-Mu'mineen. Says, Ali, you come with me. Inside the Kaaba, outside the Kaaba. Destroys the idols one by one. When the Prophet of Allah was told that, Ya Rasulullah, Mecca is free of the idols, then the hukm to Bilal came. Climb up the Mecca and now announce Allahu Akbar 4 times. But not before the idols were gone. It's not possible to announce Allahu Akbar, Allah is the greatest, when you're surrounded by idols. It's not possible. First remove the idols and then claim Allah is the greatest. First, La ilaha, and then illallah. It has to be done that way. And oh, by the way, it can't be done without the Ahlul Bayt's help. Tawassul and shafa'at, no matter what you hear online, I'm sorry, the attacks we have against tawassul and shafa'at is absurd. You will not get anywhere unless you take the Ahlul Bayt with you towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And this... So my brothers and my sisters, please, I ask you humbly, Salat is an avenue for mental health and for contentment and for sukoon. You've heard the term triggers before. Triggers are those moments that bring you back to those moments that caused you pain and hopelessness. I'm triggered by this word. I'm triggered by this person. That event triggers me. Sometimes when I enter a building, it triggers me. The opposite of trigger are glimmers. Glimmers. They have a word for everything nowadays. Glimmers. Glimmers are what? Those moments of hope, those moments of beauty, those moments of itminan, those moments of sukoon and serenity. When you have enough glimmers, you end up seeking those glimmers out. Those moments where in this disgusting, very difficult world, there's moments where the diamond shines bright enough, it conquers the darkness. I've been living in darkness all day long. That one moment where this hot wind, this Houston, Texas, 108 degrees weather, there's a breeze that happens. I was just in Houston last week. It's hot down there. I arrived in Houston 110 degrees. I mean, I love 110, but not for the weather. It's really, really hot. Nay, you guys didn't hear that. Ya Ali. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Jumla zai ho gaya Nasir bhai. Khair. And there are moments where this sun was beaming down on us. And then there are moments where we felt a little bit of a breeze, albeit for a minute. And that breeze made me forget about the heat of the sun. They're called what? Glimmers in our day. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says 5 times a day, I'm forcing you to go have your glimmer inside the mihrab. But amongst this darkness, amongst these struggles, there are moments where it should bring you hope, relief, joy. And we can't deny ourselves that moment. Part of the connection we have to Imam Hussein, is that on the nights before Ashura, he's asking Umar ibn Sa'd, don't start the battle on the 9th of Muharram. I want one night to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just one night. Imagine in the heat of that battle, knowing exactly what's going to happen. The only thing that Imam Hussein was worried about is that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam Sajjad Shahadat. I mentioned last night that seeing the halat of his father on Asr Ashur made Imam Sajjad want to get up and begin to fight and defend his father. It's only natural. You see your father in this state, you want to do something about it. But the sabr of Imam Sajjad, he had to make sure that this was not my battle. I'm now taking the women from Karbala to Kufa, Kufa to Sham. And Sham was very difficult. Kufa had its own difficulty. There are khutbahs given by our fourth Imam in Kufa. And there are khutbahs given by Imam Sajjad in Sham. Two moments that I want to bring to your attention, inshallah, and then we'll get to the actual moment that he left this world. There are moments that he would relay, Imam Sajjad, when his companions would ask him after he returned back to Medina, Mawla, tell us what happened. Tell us what happened. And there are moments that from Imam Sajjad we learn how deep his wound was. When Mukhtar had said or sent the message to Imam Sajjad that everybody who was responsible on the day of Ashura, they've all been arrested, my Mawla asked one question to the people of Mukhtar. I don't care about anybody else. Just tell me, was Hurmala arrested or not? You could see how much Hurmala affected Imam Sajjad. But there is this one moment, a small moment, mind you, in the Maqtal. They write it and they move on. But I don't understand how he got through that moment. The Ahl Haram are brought inside. And for the first time now, they're in front of Yazid. You've been to Sham, many of you. All that is still there. There's balconies up. Men are watching this happening. There's a stage in the middle. On that stage, a little bit elevated, are the women and Imam Sajjad and the children. On a very high member is Yazid, la'natullah alayh. In front of Yazid is the muqaddas head of Imam Hussein. I don't think we understand the journey that these women and these children took from Karbala to Kufa, Kufa to Sham. Do the calculation of how many miles that is. In that heat of the summer and wrapped up and tied up in ropes with these shackles around their neck. They arrive in Sham extremely exhausted, scarred. I said last night, Bibi Zainab saw things that Imam Hussein didn't see. Yazid begins to disrespect the face of Imam Hussein. Zat al-Nahiya, our Imam, now describes his words, not mine, I'm sorry. With a metal rod, he begins to beat the teeth of Imam Hussein. Announcing with fakhr, I have avenged my fathers in Badr today. With so much pride now, champion, celebrating his victory. And then he asked a question to Ibn Ziyad. Ibn Ziyad, I heard that Hussein's sister came with him to Karbala. Yes, Yazid, she did. Was she killed in Karbala or is she here right now in this crowd? She's here. Show me who she is. I want to speak to her directly. And that's when Imam Sajjad's heart begins to break into pieces. He does everything possible to protect himself or protect her from this moment. But bit by bit, the people of Ibn Ziyad now are pulling the kids away, pulling the women away, trying to separate Zainab al-Kubra from everybody else. There comes a moment now where Zainab al-Kubra is there, Fizza is there, Kulsum is there, and Imam Sajjad is there. The people of Ibn Ziyad come and they begin to beat Fizza away and beat Kulsum away. At that moment, Imam Sajjad says, I was there and my puppy Amma Zainab was there as well, watching from that member with the non-mahram eyes of Yazid. But there comes a moment when they forcibly take me away and I watch as my gharib, puppy Amma Zainab stood there in front of this darbar, 700 men on the balcony, one Yazid with his non-mahram eyes asking her, are you the daughter, are you the sister of Hussein? And watching my aunt Zainab trying to now speak to this man was devastating for him. If that wasn't enough, near the end of his life now, the doctor comes and tells him that Mawla, the poison now has reached everywhere in your body. It's only a matter of time time now. You know that for 33 years after the day of Ashura, he lived and given a grand funeral in Baqi in Medina. But even in that last moment now, Imam Sajjad wouldn't forget his Baba Hussein. He says to Imam Muhammad Baqir, the doctor does, that your father is ill, your father is weak. Make his last moments comfortable for your father. So Imam Muhammad Baqir makes all the intizamat. He makes a nice soft cushion for him. Baba, lie down and get some rest. Imam Sajjad says, move this cushion. They move the cushion. A straw mat, move the straw mat. Move everything until the only thing left was the khak of Medina. Baba, the doctor said, you have to be comfortable. And Imam Sajjad, with tears rolling down his face, why should I be comfortable as I'm leaving this world when my Baba Hussein was on the khak of Karbala? As he was leaving this world, his health gets worse and worse. Imam Muhammad Baqir narrates, I went close to my father as he's leaving this world. I hug him, and the tighter I hugged him, the more he cried. The tighter I hugged him, the more he cried. Baba, is there pain in your chest? Baba, are you uncomfortable? No, Baqir, I'm not uncomfortable. There's no pain, Baqir, at all. I'm leaving this world. My head is on your chest. I'm leaving this world. My head is on your chest on the day of Ashura. My Baba was leaving this world. Shimmer, jalisu ala sadr al-Husayn. Matem Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein.